your host for us today. I have Rollis. Thank you so much for being here. Happy New Year to everybody. Rollis is the founder of HR Maximizer, and he and his team help spotlight organizations, talent acquisition with video, tech, and teamwork. And he really helps highlight their brand and really helps them fill those hard positions to fill. So if you want to say hi again, thank you so much and
Hi,
introduce
everyone.
yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to getting to this discussion. And I've been a recruiter for almost 20 years. So I've got a lot of, I guess, past experience that maybe we can probably tap into in this discussion and to get the perspective of the recruiters and the hiring managers, if that helps.
Yes, awesome. So again, thank you. And for those of you who are watching out there, there's a chat box. You can put in any questions that you may have in there, and we can address them as we go along. And we're going to be discussing how you can land your dream nursing position in 2024. And this edition is with obviously Rollis's background in recruiting. So he's going to reveal some recruitment tips, recruiter tips for you today. So let's get into it, right? Um, so, and then let us know where you're watching from, what city, what country, let us know. So, number one, we're going to, oh, I lost you, I think. There you are. So, number one tip we're going to say is welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to say is that you need clarity. So, what are your thoughts on that? Because a lot of my nursing clients that I work with are really not clear as to what it is that they want in a position, and it sometimes creates that they're applying for so many different positions. So, what are your thoughts on that? Number one tip: clarity.
Wow, that's what, and I want your audience to know I didn't know you were going to mention that first, but that's actually one of my top things I usually talk to candidates about, and it's clarity. I love it. So the more clear you are, the more precise you are, the easier
Mhm.
it is for a recruiter or a hiring manager to fit you in a position. If you're just kind of all over the place, um, that's something you don't want to do. You don't want to have that type of perception by either a recruiter or the hiring manager. The hiring
Mhm.
manager wants to know you're committed to their particular department or what they're looking to do. The recruiter wants to know what you're most interested in so they can make a better fit. So I think all around clarity is very important. So, saying things like I just want to join your organization to become a registered nurse there. It's just not going to be not going to go over as well as if you're very clear. Like I've had a long time passion for pediatrics ever since I've been doing my rotations. I loved this and that and other about pediatrics. Being able to talk clearly about the reasons why you're passionate about that particular department that you're applying for, I think
Mhm.
definitely helps with clarity. When it comes to leadership, it's a similar thing. Being clear about what you want in that leadership position, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, because I've spoken to, like I said, some of my nursing clients because I'm a nurse career coach, and some of them will say, well, I'm interested in labor and delivery, and I kind of like psychiatric stuff too, and maybe outpatient something or other. And I'm like, those can't be any further from each other. So really, if you have an idea, maybe you do like working with children or babies, so maybe you should be in that kind of area. And I think once, like you said, they're clear, then they can really target what it is that they really want to apply for. Because then it's just like, I think recruiters get confused because there's like 10 applications. Or like, okay, which one do you really
Right.
want?
Right. They don't know
Right.
which one you really want, and it makes it more difficult for them to sell you or introduce you to the hiring managers involved. Let's say someone does have three interests, like they're equally interested in labor and delivery, pediatrics, something you said, and I can't remember what the other one was,
Like psych.
psychiatrics.
Yeah.
Let's say they're equally interested in all three. What I would suggest in that case is prepare a very clear and concise case for each of those three, but separate them. Don't try and
Hmm.
have them all three in one. So have your jobs that you're applying for that are the psych related jobs, and talk about why you're passionate about being in psychiatric department, blah blah blah. Maybe some of your experience, some of the cases you worked on in your rotations or in your past experience, and just why you're passionate about that. That way, when it gets sent off to that hiring manager, they're not
Hmm.
confused by seeing you mention a bunch of stuff about pediatrics and they don't have any pediatrics in their psych department. So I think if you do have those varied interests, just don't try and have a one all be all
Right.
resume and cover letter.
Yeah, so that's a great point because I tell my nursing clients when they are interested in, say, maybe two or three things, what I ask them to do is prioritize them in order. So, what is the top, like, what is the top, like your dream job? And I usually say, like, what would you be jumping up and down, like, if you got? So it helps them to really clearly lay it out. So when they present it, they could say, well, I'm interested in these three areas, but, this is my first, second, and third choice, especially for residency programs, because some of them are they'll take you into a residency program, but they'll place you in different areas. So sometimes they do ask you to list them out in order of priority.
Ah, see, that's a good. That's where you come in as the subject matter expert. I didn't think about that. That it even want you to list them all out. I was just thinking in terms of if you're
Oh
applying
yeah,
for, let's say, a psych job,
yeah.
you don't want to mention all the other stuff.
Of course, no, you're exactly right on. So that's number one, clarity, and then we're gonna go on to number two,
Okay.
which is building a career that really fits around your lifestyle. So, you know, I speak to a lot of people and they're always trying to make their work around, their life. And really it should be, you know what I mean? Like you should get a position that works around your lifestyle. So what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, and I know you're more intimately familiar with this than I am, but from the recruiting side, I would say that there's certain types of jobs that typically you're going to have your 12-hour shifts, and then that nurses, there's certain nurses really love that because they only have to work 3 days a week, maybe a little
Right.
bit more depending on the situation. But then
Mhm.
there's other sets of jobs that are more kind of an 8 to 3 or 7 to 3 kind of job, where maybe they're working in the operating room, or perhaps if they're working at a surgery center or something like that, they might be able to have those kind of like early morning to early afternoon jobs. And then if someone, maybe they're going to school and they need that daytime open, maybe they do work at an urgent care that's open a little bit later, or they're working at a hospital that has an evening shift and they can still sleep at night but still be able to go to school. Maybe they do want to work at night. I know a lot of registered nurses don't necessarily want to work nights, but there's a set that do, and so maybe that fits
Right.
your lifestyle. So I think really being clear, and especially if they have someone like you coaching through the process about what they prefer in terms of schedule, that way when they do find a job that fits what they want, it makes a stronger case. And they're going to be able to mention that in the cover letter. They're going to be able to mention it in the objective on their resume of what type of position they're looking for. And it just makes the hiring manager and the recruiter make a much better, quicker decision on it.
That's a great point. And, what are your thoughts on, sometimes they'll have postings, but they may not necessarily put what the hours of the job is. I mean, usually it depends on the state and all that. Um, but in terms of the posting itself, I think some nurses are hesitant to ask certain questions during the interview process. But I think that's a legit, question to ask. Am I gonna be, working expected to work weekends, holidays? These are things that I think it's fine. And I think before it was a little bit taboo to ask a lot of questions. But, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think that to me, if I went far enough in the process with a recruit or an applicant and they never asked me what the schedule was, it's kind of a red flag. I would prefer them to ask me what's a typical schedule look like. I think it's a very fair question, and really at a base, that should be in the job posting itself. So that's kind of a fail on the organization's part if they're not
Mhm.
including shift information in the job. But if they don't, I would definitely ask, what does a typical schedule look like, and let them explain it. Sometimes they're hesitant to put it in a job, the shift, because they're not exactly sure what that
Mhm.
schedule is going to look like yet. Or it may be a situation where maybe it's a day job that involves some call, and the call is kind of in flux. They're not sure if they're going to require a call or not, or how much call they're going to require. So sometimes there's some questions, and that's why they leave it out. But if it's
Right.
missing, I would definitely ask about typical schedule for sure.
Right. That's a good point. And I think for all the new nurses out there, especially the new grads, it's okay to ask as well when your orientation will be, because sometimes they'll have orientations just during the day, and then they'll put you on a night shift or evenings. So it's okay to ask exactly
Oh,
how long you'll be on days or whatever that case is,
that's a
because
great point too.
some people don't know. And then, I mean, I wasn't going to get into this, but now that you mentioned that, money is always a big thing. So when do you start discussing money? Because you don't want to waste time. I know New York State now they have to put the salary, but a lot of times it's a big range, right? And
Yeah.
some states are not required. So, you know, we don't want to waste, the recruiter's time or the hiring manager, and vice versa. So what do you think about asking about the salary and when?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about that. I've been in the camp of organizations showing what their range is since 2016. I mean, I think that eventually it will happen, but every organization should just go ahead and put their ranges in there just so we don't waste anybody's time.
Right.
I would say pretty early on in the process, that first screening call with the recruiter, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking what's the compensation scale look like on this position. The ranges are wide typically, just for your audience's sake, and I know you
Mhm.
probably know this, is they have such a wide range because they have to put in their full scope based on experience, your
Right.
skill set, what certifications you have. And so for just someone just applying in there that maybe they
Mhm.
have no certifications and no experience versus someone who has 15 years of experience and they got like 3 or 4 national certifications, the range can
Mhm.
be wide and they have to include that in that range. I think it's helpful if they have a midpoint in there, but in most cases, yes, you're right. They're going to have like a high and a low, and it's going to be very difficult. So I would say ask the recruiter before you even
Mhm.
get to the point of the hiring manager, what is the compensation range on this position? I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay, awesome. And I think also benefits, it's okay. I mean, you don't have to get into too much detail, but you can also do your own research of the organization and what maybe benefits they have, because it's important to look at the whole package, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, because there's always that. It's kind of hard to explain, but basically, it's like you don't want to be too thirsty, but at the
Right.
same time, you want to look like you are someone who is worth with their salt, right? And so,
Right.
someone who's
Right.
worth their salt is going to ask those kind of questions,
Mhm.
and those are fair questions. So, I would ask a lot of questions about what's the benefit package look like. Is there somewhere I can do some extra research on your website? Can you send me
Mhm.
information about your benefit package? I am comparing it with a couple of other opportunities. Look, I have no problem saying it because they should know that if you're a registered nurse
Mhm.
and especially if you have experience, and even if you're a new grad, they should know that you are, looking at other organizations, and it makes sense, right? They would
Right.
think it's strange if you didn't. So I don't think
Right.
there's anything wrong with asking about their compensation schedule, asking about the benefits. So it's going to help me, and let's say I'm the applicant. It's going to help me make the best decision for myself and my family. But I'm also looking to align myself with an organization that I believe in the values and the mission. And so it's not
Right.
all about the money, but it is important, important part of the process. So I don't think anyone would be
Right.
sideways about you asking that.
Right. And again, my thoughts are always too, if the more transparent they are, it really tells you a lot about the organization as well. So
Yeah.
really looking at that culture and how things are, you should really look at the signs, as you're going through that job search process. So that's important. So really, lastly on this part about building a career around your lifestyle, I think a lot of times you have to also look at your end goal. So maybe you're applying for a position that will bring you closer to what your end goal is, so that you're not really, kind of just like, oh, let me just do this. But really, if you have a set goal, you're working towards that, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the clearer you are, the better about what your goal is, the better you're going to have those conversations and the more confidence you're going to have in the interview process. You don't always have to disclose, your end goal with that
Right.
particular person, because who knows, in some cases it may scare them a little bit if your position is higher than what they have. But
Right.
but I think it is good for you to be clear on what it is, so that when you are having these conversations, you're going to be asking those questions. So it's kind of like the whole act as if
Hmm.
situation where,
Hmm.
if I'm clear on my goals, what would a person who's on this career track, what kind of questions would this person ask? And I'm sure having someone like yourself can help them walk through what those questions would be once you know what they are. But I think it's very good to have that clear end goal in mind, beginning with the end in mind. Is how Stephen Covey put it in his book.
Right, right. That's great. And then if you guys are watching out there, let me know. Put don't be shy. Put some comments, questions in there, and we'll definitely
That's right.
respond back. And then number three is timing. It's kind of broad, but I put it in there because I think it's important in 2024. I mean, in any year, really, to not waste your time, right? And meaning, I just did a post about this today. A lot of nurses will not apply for certain positions because they think they have to meet all the requirements, right?
All right. Good point.
And
Yeah.
right, and they're like, maybe it's not the right time to go into leadership, or maybe it's not the right time to go into education. So, like, what are your thoughts on the timing, and people just kind of counting themselves out?
I 100% believe in go ahead and shooting for that position. The worst they can tell you is
Mhm.
no. It'll help you learn, and you can learn through the process. Let's say you apply for it, you don't get the job, asking questions with the recruiter. Hey, listen, I really appreciate the time you spent with me. I'm curious if there's any feedback you can give me as to why perhaps I wasn't chosen, or maybe what
Mhm.
some of the other candidates look like. Maybe the ultimate person who was chosen. But what are some things they had that I was lacking? I would love to know, especially if you have a good rapport with that recruiter. I think it
Right.
would be helpful. And so the next time you're going to already be prepared for that. And especially if it's within the organization that you're already a part of, I think it's going to be much easier to get that information. So learn from those experiences. It's kind of like building a muscle. You have to
Right.
exercise it. So if you never exercise that muscle of reaching out for those positions, you're never going to have that muscle to get ready for the time that when the right opportunity does come. So I do believe in shooting for the stars when it comes to
Mhm.
positions. I mean, obviously, if it's like way out of your range, and where they think you're delusional, then obviously don't do that. But within reason, I would definitely
Right.
to
Right.
shoot for it. In fact, they found that, and they did some studies that I want to say it's roughly 60%. I think somehow the number 60% jumps out at me of cases that minorities, especially, do not apply for positions that they fully that they if they don't feel like they fully qualify. Whereas I think it was 60% of the males, non-minorities, they
Yeah.
they were willing to do it. Something like that.
Right.
Someone in
I
the
think I
comments can look
read
that
that.
up. Yeah, look that up in
Yeah.
the comments. But the thought process behind that is there's a lot of people who do apply for jobs that they don't necessarily qualify for
Right.
everything in the position, but they
Mhm.
apply anyway. And a lot of times they do get at least an interview, and sometimes they get the position. So don't let
Right.
that hold you back. Go ahead and apply for those positions, and then if it truly is needed, then yes, they will let you know, and you'll find out what you need to get. I also feel like sometimes, especially with minority candidates, they wanted to have that much extra in terms of certifications and things like that to apply for a particular job because then maybe they don't feel like they're as qualified. But I would say even in those cases, even before you get all those certifications, go ahead and apply for those positions because when it gets down to it, the hiring manager, if they're thinking with the right view in mind, they're going to give on some of those things. Oh, well, you know what? They can get that certification after they get this job, but this
Right.
is the
Right.
right person for this. So I would also add that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Um, and then, so we'll recap for those that are just joining us. We're talking about how to land your dream position in 2024, recruiter tips revealed with Rollis here, who's a former recruiter, and then me as a nurse career coach. So, number one, we identified was clarity. Number two, building a career around your lifestyle. And then number three, really timing, really going for those positions and not being fearful and just taking, shooting your shot. And then number four is really start to build your connections and start networking, even if you're a nursing student, right? Go to these conferences, go to events, and, just start connecting because that's most the majority of jobs it's like usually, oh, I know somebody that knew someone, right? And then that's kind of how you get the connection. So what are your thoughts on that, Rollis?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. Networking we could break it down this way. It's all about visibility and mind share.
Right.
Warren Buffett talks about this with his businesses. When he looks to invest in a business, he wants to invest in a business that has what's called a moat or mind share. And so basically what that means is when they think of X, they think of you. So whatever it
Mhm.
is that you want that particular recruiter or hiring manager When they think of whatever that is, you want yourself to be in that conversation. That's how you want to start growing your visibility. So to go to your earlier point, let's say it is psych nursing. Are you already involved with the associations that are connected with psych
Hmm.
nursing? Are you making yourself visible in those organizations? Are you volunteering for certain things with those organizations? Are you volunteering for certain projects within the community or within the whatever system you work for now doing psych? Are you one of the ones who volunteer to take a psych patient? Build up that experience that comes in, because if you're in an emergency room, as you know, or if you're in a situation where you're taking in patients coming in out of the street that don't have appointments, you're going to get your share of those, right, who come in. And so some
Right.
of those facilities don't have um, psych specialists, if you will. So let's say you're trying to break into that. I would do whatever I could to increase my visibility in that area, and that will help you grow to get that next position. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Does that sound right?
Yeah, for sure. Because I always say to, and this is any nurse, it doesn't have to be a new nurse or a novice nurse, but um even past experiences that are not related to nursing, right, or healthcare, you can pull from other, right, positions that you've had, especially people that are in the service industry, right?
Yes,
So people that are in the service industry, like if you're a bartender or waiting, waiter, waitress, you're dealing with people, right? It's these people skills that they're looking for. So you can be a highly qualified candidate that, on paper you have all these certifications and everything like that, but you get to the interview and I know everybody's nervous, but like your people skills are not really so great. So if you can't even connect with the recruiter and really have a flowing conversation during an interview, that's going to be a problem. So transferable skills from past experiences, they don't necessarily have to be in healthcare. I would still bring those up, right? um
absolutely,
so I think like you said, I used to be a former nurse, so you kind of see everything. So you can pull from those experiences and say, yeah, I've done this. Or maybe if you're going for a leadership position, maybe you weren't a charge nurse, titled charge nurse all the time, but maybe you were put in charge nurse position a couple times. You can bring that up and say, hey,
yes,
I was a team leader or I was charge nurse a few times and I'm able to, you know, XYZ and relate it to that job description, right? So,
absolutely. And I think sometimes a mistake that some people make is there are certain experiences that they have
mhm,
that they don't put on the resume because they're going to explain that in the interview process. But you may not get to the interview process if you don't actually include that. So things like what you mentioned, just adding a simple bullet about how you're able to fill in as a charge nurse, or you're able to create schedules, or whatever the case is. I
mhm,
think it's great. Don't make your resume, a 15-page novel, but if you can add
right.
a few of those bullets on those, that's really going to get their attention.
Right. And we're gonna get into this in a little bit, but really tailoring that resume and making it simple and easy to read is so important, because people don't have time to be, like you said, reading novels, and they're using a lot of software these days that are taking
Yeah.
picking up those keywords.
Yeah.
Um,
One
yeah, go
other, just
ahead.
one follow up point. I was watching. I don't know if you ever heard of Adley. She's on Instagram. She has like a lot. She's millions of followers, and she has
Hmm.
a viral company, viral content creation company called Viralish. Anyway, I was watching something she put out the other day, and she talked about the first 5 second rule.
Hmm.
That when they're watching a video, they are determining if they're going to scroll in the first 5 seconds. So if you
Yeah.
don't have your right message in those first 5 seconds, they're never going to see the other parts. They're never going to see the middle and
Right.
the end, right?
Right.
So if we apply that to this, if you don't have it right when they first start looking at your information, or if you don't have the visibility part right, then
Hmm.
you're never going to get to the other parts. So I think probably maybe your next point is going to touch on this, but I would suggest to definitely make sure that first impressions, you focus more time on that than anything
Right.
else.
Right. And that's key, especially like the front, just your name alone. So, like, I usually tell the candidates, like, bold your name, make it big. And if you have certifications or if you have a BSN or a MSN or DMP or whatever, put it at the top in bold letters. So it's like, boom, that's your education and certifications. So make it easier for the recruiter or hiring manager to scroll through and to see the key points.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then lastly, on this point about starting to build connections and networking, I think it's really just putting yourself out there with branding, right? Even though you're a nurse, you may think you don't have a brand, but really you do. You do have a brand, um, and it's really important to really get out there and meet people.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Now, I'm curious. I want to ask you, as a nurse,
Right.
where do you think I should start? If I wanted to grow my visibility, what platform is it going to be? LinkedIn? Is it going to be TikTok, YouTube? What's your opinion? What do you think?
LinkedIn, hands down. It's going to
Okay.
be LinkedIn, um, because I think all hiring managers and professionals, it's a professional platform. And I think now we're up to like 1 billion users. And it started out mostly as a job search platform, LinkedIn, right? And I believe I read a statistic, it's like 94% of recruiters will go on LinkedIn to search their candidates to see,
Yeah.
what it is that they could find about them. So hands down, LinkedIn.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, that's relevant coming from a nurse. I appreciate that.
Yes. And then number 5 is be proactive and reach out to the recruiters or hiring managers
Yes, I
even
agree.
before you apply.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think if you start building that relationship earlier, you're creating that
Right.
mind share I was talking about earlier.
Mhm.
So if they already have seen your profile before, they see you're going using your example before as a psych nurse or a psych nurse leader. They've come across your information before, especially if you've done a video, you've done maybe some articles that has to do with something. Maybe you talk about some class you just went to, a certification you just completed. But anyway,
Right.
you started to create that mind share. So when you do apply shortly after, you
Mhm.
already have what's called the recency factor. You're a recent person that they saw. It's just like with branding. That's why they use brand awareness. You're
Right.
creating brand awareness for yourself by doing that.
Right, and like simple things like even on your LinkedIn headline saying like aspiring ER nurse or aspiring leader in a specific area, right? Already easily it's visible, and then you can just even reach out to recruiters. Hey, I'm a nursing student, or I'm a senior nursing student, or I'm a whatever nurse, but in like a year I'd like to be in this position. When do you think these types of positions will start being available to me? So like just start talking to recruiters, so like you said, you'll be top of mind when it comes time for you to be in position and alignment to apply for those positions.
Absolutely. I think that if you're able to put your name in the hat right before it comes out too, you're already ahead of the game. You're already top of mind, because think about it from the recruiter standpoint.
Mhm.
They get tons of requisitions, tons of candidates who come in. And so the
Right.
easiest we can make it for them to think of you, the
Mhm.
better.
And that's nice transition into my next one, was basically you need to be, the earlier you apply, the better.
Oh yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Because some people will say, "Oh, well, I don't really have everything." And that's why you need to be, I say, like resume ready. You constantly need to be updating it so when like something, a residency program or a leadership position comes up, you don't have to be messing around trying to fix your resume because your resume ready so you can apply early. Because think about it, it's just common sense. If you apply early, they're going to start interviewing you a little bit earlier,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
what are your
Also,
thoughts on that?
yeah, that, and also there's a. I'm just gonna make it. I'm just gonna give it a term. I'm just gonna
Yes,
call it candidate fatigue, where they
right.
have so many candidates that have come in. Either the hiring manager or the recruiter, they're just like, we can't look at it anymore right now. Let's just go ahead and make a decision. Let's move
Mhm.
forward. But you know what? Just in case these candidates that we're looking at don't work out, let's still keep the job open so we can go back and revisit those candidates. And so I'm not saying it's a total loss if you do it late, but in a lot of cases, unless the first choices don't work out, they're not going to look at yours because they've already gone through
Yeah.
the process, right? So
Right.
I would say earlier the better. Yes, you're more likely to be in that first batch of interviews that they do, and you're more likely to get that offer.
Exactly. So thank you for reaffirming that. And then number 7, we're gonna get into how really using keywords and tailoring your resume and cover letter, and even using AI as a tool for
Yeah.
resumes and covers. So, what are your thoughts on that? I know we've talked about AI quite a bit over the last year or so, and some people don't even want to use it. Like I put out a poll on LinkedIn for nurses to know like who's using it, if they've ever used it or not. I'm still getting the numbers, but there's some people that haven't used it at all.
Right, right. So I know privacy is a concern for some, and what
Right.
I would suggest is when you're putting information in there, just don't put in your things like your name, address, phone number, things like that, personal things. Just but put in the things about yourself, but just without personally identifying yourself. So I would
Hmm.
suggest to put in things like, and going back to the first part of your conversation, you talked about clarity. So that's one key thing that's going to make
Hmm.
AI help you. You have to be very clear about what you want it to do for you and what the AI's role is in that process. So if I'm having a conversation with AI, let's say ChatGPT, for example, I would
Hmm.
say, look, I'm looking to expand or grow my career into psych nursing leadership. So as a psychiatric registered nurse leader, perhaps a director or manager, what are some keywords I should be using on my resume? And you are my resume, you are my career advisor, if you will. Tell the AI that they're your career advisor in that moment, in that chat.
Hmm.
And then you can also supply them with your resume and just simply remove your personal identifiable information, but leave all the other stuff in there. You can
Right.
paste your resume or upload the resume to ChatGPT and ask it to analyze it based on my current qualifications. What are some of my strengths and weaknesses as it relates to a psych nurse leader? It's even better if you take a psych nurse leadership
Job
job
description.
description and upload that as well. So upload the job
Hmm.
description as well as your resume and say, let me know what are my strengths and weaknesses. What are some things I should probably highlight more in my resume that's mentioned in the resume, that's mentioned in the job description? What are
Hmm.
some keywords I should perhaps utilize more in my resume? And it'll just start spitting out those examples, and then just continue to ask it questions. Another thing you can do is look, ask me 10 questions that I should be able to answer as a psych nurse leader. You can ask it that. You can come up with questions for that. You can
Hmm.
ask just create other questions for you. Create questions that I might come up with or interact with in an interview. If I'm interviewing with a psych nurse leader who's considering me for a leadership position, what are some things they may possibly ask me? And so the list goes on and on. But you're having this conversation, and I would suggest that your viewers do it all in one chat conversation about that
Hmm.
position, and
Right.
then create a different one for another one. That way, it's going to remember everything from that one conversation as it gives you the answers.
Those are some great tips from a former recruiter. So guys, and somebody who uses AI, so definitely listen out for that. Um, and take those tips. And then that brings me into the last one, actually number 9 is prepare before your interview, right? So a lot of nurses that I work with, they'll reach out to me, as a career coach, kind of last minute. They're like, "Oh, I got an interview like in 2 days," and they're like, "Oh,
Right.
can we, set up a," and then I try to, make it work and set it up with them, but don't wait till the last minute, right? Start researching that organization and prepare early because, like you said, sometimes they want to interview people really quickly and get them in there. So you don't want to like not be prepared. So definitely interview early. And
And I would say role play. Try do some
yes.
role. Get a buddy. Maybe there's someone in your household or just someone who you can interact with. I want
Hmm.
you to basically play the role of the nurse manager. And if you did your research on ChatGPT, you can give them the questions. Ask me these questions. Let's do a role play.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will also say another thing to be prepared for is they're going to ask you, why are you looking for your next position, or why did you leave your last position? Have a very good positive answer, very
Yes.
succinct. Don't go like thinking and well, what am I going to say? Have that ready so when you're in the moment, it's going to come across really good.
Right. And this is what I'm saying. And this is why, as a nurse career coach, this is something I help my clients with. We go through behavioral style questions because they're always going to ask you the similar ones like, how do you deal with conflict? You know, customer service type questions. How, when did you go above and beyond, or those types of things. But now recruiters are really asking clinical style, not recruiters so much, unless they're a nurse recruiter, meaning hiring managers will ask specific clinical questions. They'll give
Oh
you like a case
yes.
study of like maybe respiratory distress or something. And they'll be like, all right, well, what would you do in this position? So I prepare the nurses. I prepared a ER nurse recently, and I gave her a couple. We ran through like sepsis, stroke, and heart attacks. And guess what they asked? They asked her like two out of those three things, right? And
Nice.
she was prepared to be like, oh, she felt confident. She's like, okay, because most nurses probably know how to answer it, but because they're put on the spot, they may not. They're like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I didn't think they were going to ask that, so they may not be ready. So those types of things,
I want to add something to that.
yeah.
So some feedback that I get why candidates get knocked out of the process is their answers didn't necessarily answer the question that they asked. Number
Hmm.
one, and number two, it's way too long and they rambled and never really got to the point. So that's why coaching from someone like yourself helps, and they'll never give that feedback back to the candidate in a lot of cases. So the
Right.
candidates didn't know why they didn't get the job. Well, that's why you didn't get it. So go ahead and do the role play before. That way, when you get in the
Right.
situation,
Right.
you're going to be able to handle it better.
And you know what question we always go through is and I think I skipped the last one. Sorry guys, I skipped number 8. It was the follow-up is key, but really that's just following up after applying and really pitching and promoting yourself. But we can roll this into the preparing. I tell them to have an interview pitch because they're going to ask you, tell me about yourself. And this is a trap. This is where when people are not prepared, not confident, they'll start rambling on and on about,
Yeah,
all these
yeah,
things. So we prepare their pitch and I give them a structure. Like number one, I usually call it the hook. Don't recite your resume. Nobody wants you to recite your resume because they
right.
have it. So give them a little hook of like, you know what, I never actually wanted to be a nurse. And they're like, oh, I'm a little bit interested in that story, right? Be a
Yes,
storyteller. Because like you said, interview fatigue. They're so tired of hearing the same type of
yeah,
stuff. So switch it up and make it interesting and start with something they're not expecting. So I call that like the hook. So
I
they're
love
kind
it.
of interested in you. And then kind of start telling them the why. So really all your questions that you're probably going to get asked, just summarize quickly. Like why are
Yeah,
you the candidate for this position? So really highlight your strengths and really give it to them in that quick intro and that pitch. And then they're going to be like, "Oh wow, like they answered like most of my questions in that pitch."
exactly. I love it.
So
Yeah, I love the part about the hook. That is key. And I also like to think of it this way too. They want the trailer, not the movie. All right. They just want to.
right,
They want the high points.
the
Give you all the high
appetizer.
points, and yeah, just a little bit. And then you can always ask them, "Hey, is there
Right,
any part of what I just said that you want me to delve into more?" And they
right,
can always let you know. But in
right.
most cases, they try and give them the movie when they just want the trailer.
Exactly. Just give them the trailer, give them the appetizer. And at the end, I usually tell them to say something like, I would love to join your organization because something about the values or the mission. So it makes them understand that you've done your research. And if you lay out like 3 to 4 values and what the mission is, they'd be like, damn, they did their homework. Like, and then they're like, well, I only have these couple questions left because you pretty much did the work, and they'll be
Right.
impressed. Right.
Absolutely.
And then your delivery just have to be very confident in the way you present it. And then number 10 is getting a career coach.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've highlighted that throughout our discussion how important it
Right.
is. I mean, getting the clarity, knowing what your intro is going to be, knowing how you're going to answer those clinical questions you talked about,
Mm-hmm.
being clear on the why of getting the interview. Those are all important things that a lot of people end up losing the opportunity for that job by
Right.
something that and they have, because they don't have coaching. They don't know why they lost that job. Not I say lost. I mean lost the opportunity to get that
The
job.
opportunity. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so how is it helping for the next one? Well, they don't know. They don't know what to work on for the next one. So I would
Right.
definitely suggest having a career coach. If they got the funds to do it, I would say do it.
Right. And the other thing, you let me know about this. We'll wrap it up in just a few, but when you have a phone call with the recruiter, right? I usually tell my clients, "Hey, listen, why don't you ask the recruiter like what are some tips like that I could, what is the hiring manager really looking for?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
guess what? The recruiter wants you to get the job so they could like
exactly.
move on to the next thing. So, right? Don't be afraid to ask the hiring manager, hey, you got any tips for me to be like, or who am I really interviewing with? Who's on the panel? Like,
Yeah,
get all the info from the recruiter, right? Get the tea right
absolutely.
away.
Yep. Yeah. Who am I going to expect to have an interview with? Sometimes they'll just start with a phone screen. So who
Right,
am I going
right.
to be accepting a phone call from?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll make sure and even ask even what number they're calling from if you can, because you can say, look, I get a lot of phone calls throughout the day. I want to make sure I address this person properly, and I look out for their call. What number will they likely be calling from, and who will I be speaking with? That gives you an opportunity to, number one, do research about the person. Number
Right,
two, you got their phone number, so you can follow up
right.
afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Now I would say get an email, get things like that, and then stay organized. I know we're gonna wrap it up, but stay organized because I've made this mistake before where I've applied for like 3, 4 jobs, and then like somebody was calling and I got confused. I thought it was another position
Yeah,
and started talking about something. I was like, wait a minute, this is the wrong thing.
yeah,
So stay organized and maybe do little like cue cards or something about the position, da 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 da, and so that you could be prepared and you don't
yeah.
confuse roles.
Yeah, program it in your phone. And once you find
Yeah,
out someone's going to call you, Joe Smith
right,
is going to call you in the next couple of days, and the number is 555-1212, whatever. Put that in your phone, and then put what company they're with, what organization they're with, and maybe their
right,
title. That way, when they call in, you'll be able to answer right away. That's going to be like next level. If you
right.
answer the phone, you know who they are.
Right. And then lastly, I know just to wrap it up, video to me is so important. So I always tell my clients, my nursing clients, do like an intro video on LinkedIn with like all your key things of why you should be hired for a certain position and put it out there because
Absolutely.
recruiters are watching. So any last tips for our viewers
Yeah.
out there?
Some people I know are hesitant to do video, and I get that. I understand
Right.
that. Just know that when you record a video, doesn't mean you have to post it, right? So just get in the habit of at least recording the videos and collecting them. Number two, if you just absolutely don't like how you look on camera, you don't want to do it, then at least take a picture. Okay, take some pictures with you and other people, preferably in your field, which helps to kind of along with the whole networking aspect of LinkedIn. Hey, this
Hmm.
person works well with others. There's somebody else to take a look at. So at the very least, take pictures. But I 100% say, if you can, if you're okay with it, post some short videos about yourself. That'd be great.
Right. And a LinkedIn profile photo. You could
Yes,
do
thank
it with
you.
your phone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And tell the people out there, right? If they wanted to reach out to your company and have their organization highlighted, tell them again what you do and where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find us at hrmaximizer.com. It's where we help organizations create videos to attract great candidates like those who are watching this. But some of you may be leaders and you're having a hard time filling certain positions. We can come in and help create content that will attract those people who you're looking for, and make sure that you're attracting the people who are most like-minded to what you're looking for as well. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. If someone wants to link with me on LinkedIn, that's fine. You just go to my profile, hit the direct message, and let's connect.
Yes, and Rollis and his company does great work, so definitely reach out. And if you want to connect with me, definitely just give me a message. Like I said, I'm a nurse career coach. And again, I hope this was helpful. I don't know where the people are. Maybe they're on lunch or something, but we didn't get anybody. But
But if
maybe
you
we'll
but
get,
they'll watch the replay, and you
yeah,
gotta
they'll
get
watch
this
the
lady here. Get
replay.
this lady here to coach you. Okay.
Get him for your videos. He's already giving me some sound tips before we started. So Rollis, this was so much fun. Thank you. I appreciate it, and we'll have to do it again. Thank you so
Sounds
much.
great.
All right.
Appreciate
Have
you.
a good day, everybody. Take care.
Bye, everyone.